Probability, also known as the chance of something happening. Good news is that for functional skills, you don't need to know anything super advanced about probability, but what I'm going to do is give you a bit more than you probably, pun intended, need to know for the exam. So let's just start with the basics. So probability is often described, when you describe events, you've got one of 5 different words. So you can say that something is certain to happen. You can have something is likely to happen. Something has an even chance of happening. That means half a chance, or 50%. You can have unlikely, which is under 50% chance of something happening. And then you've got impossible, which is absolutely no chance at all of an event happening. I'm just going to show a line down here. So highest probability to lowest probability. So I'll write high to low. And then what I'll do is I'll put your percentages of chance. A certain is 100% chance. That's 0% chance. This is 50% chance. And then obviously this is more than 50. So if it's 50.1, it will end up in there. And then I'll have less than 50. So if this was 49.99999%, it will end up in the unlikely column. Sorry, row. So that's a basic setup of what each of the words of probability mean. So while I keep just designing this table, I also want to say that you'll notice I've quoted percentages here. So the reason why I've done this is because you can, in an exam, quote a probability as a percentage. You can also quote a probability as a decimal. You can also quote a probability of something as a fraction. This is assuming, I might add, that the examiner has not given an order how they want their probability set out. They might actually say to you, I want this as a percentage. But assuming they don't, you have a choice of 3 possibilities on how they want their probability quoted. So let's continue this table. Right, this is something you need to understand. If you're quoting a decimal, certain is worth 1. Don't argue. That's just the rule of probability. So no guesses that no chance equals 0 for the purposes of this. And then everything in between. So you now know that probability ranges between 1 at the top, 0 at the bottom. So halfway will be 0.5. And then this will be more than. And then this will be less than. So that's that in numerical form. And then I said, finally, you've got it in fraction form. So fraction form is simple. 0.5 is also known as a half. 0 is going to be 0 whatever you do. Less than half. Any fraction less than half. More than half. And then you don't have 1 over 1, you call it 1. So that is your probabilities. In an exam, if they ask you to give a probability, they're looking at one of these columns here. So either this one, or this one, unless the examiner says which way they want it quoted. If they are saying describe the probability of something happening, then they want this column here. Pen a bit. So this is describe or descriptions. And these ones are the actual probabilities. Just be careful of that, because some students, they look and they say give the probability of this happening, and they quote a word rather than one of these numbers. So just be on the lookout. Look out for the word describe or description of probability. Then you know it's one of these words here and not a number. Just one thing to point out. So to finish off, because I said this won't take long, but you might be given a scenario like this. You get given a table of favourite hobby of, let's say, hobbies, bad grammar, hobbies of students, and football, helps if it's in the right place, cricket, I don't know, rugby, and they've already pre-filled this table for you, and let's say you've got 50, 25 and 25, and then they'll ask you what is the probability student picked at random likes cricket. Notice I haven't said describe or description. I've been asked what is the probability. So your brain at this point just says, careful now, it's got to be either a percentage, a decimal, or a fraction. So let's look. To work out the probability goes as follows. What is the successful outcome? You picked somebody who's cricket, so you write that down, 25. What is the total number of possible outcomes? So the first thing you do is you say, right, well, there's 50 plus 25 plus 25. There's 100 students in this survey. So the total number of students or possibilities goes at the bottom. Now I know what you're thinking. I've just created a fraction. You're right, I did. And in the exam, if you left it like that, it's a legitimate answer. However, if you do fractions, your fractions must be simplified. There is no tolerance on this. If you can simplify it, you must simplify it. So if I was quoting this as a fraction, this one can be simplified, and to speed it up, we divide both by 5. So I'll say that is 5 over 20, which ends up being 1 over 4 because I divide by 5 for a second time. So that is your true answer here, is 1 over 4. As I said, if you write 25 over 100, you may get a mark if an examiner feels generous, but what they're looking for is 1 over 4. But the smarter students amongst you watching this video will say, well, hang on a minute, maybe we're making this more difficult than it needs to be. Because I remember from your thrilling percentages lecture that all percentages are fractions out of 100, and conveniently in this question, there's 100 students here, so why don't I write this? I could say, well, hang on, examiner, 25 over 100 is the same as saying 25%. That way, I've avoided all that mess of simplifying, and because you as an examiner failed to tell me whether you want it in fraction, decimal or percentage, well, I've taken the easy way out, and you know what? Good on you! Do it! In fact, even smarter students might say, well, hang on a minute, because the examiner did not tell me whether he wants it fraction, decimal or percentage, I know this is the same as saying 25 divided by 100. Well, I know my knowledge of dividing by 10, 100 or 1,000, so I could quote 0.25. And there is my answer again. Or some students might say, well, that says 25 hundredths, so it's 0.25. If you don't understand what I'm saying, please see my previous videos on fractions, percentages and decimals. And either of these answers are legitimate, because in this question I did not ask how I wanted my probabilities laid out. If it was me in an exam and an examiner did not tell me how they want their probabilities laid out, I would attempt to go fraction first, just in case you get a weird number like 1 over 3, because 1 over 3 is terrible to write as a decimal, because you need to remember it's 0.3 recurring. So I would go fraction first. Or if it really presented itself nice, like this 25 over 100, I would then go for a percentage. But I would say it's whatever suits you. In a question like this, pick the method you feel confident with and go for it. You'll always end up with a fraction to begin with anyway. It's then your choice whether you simplify down or you decide to go to a percentage or a decimal. That's all I wanted to mention about probability. So I'll just center the screen now so you can see everything in one go.